Hello, welcome to Hidden History and Odyssey Through Time. I'm your host, John Rodriguez, and welcome to Season 3 of the Best History Podcast in New York State. This is episode 29 of the podcast, and the title of this episode is Above and Beyond the Call of Duty, the true story of World War II Staff Sergeant Lucian Adams. During the Second World War, up to 500,000 Hispanic Americans, including 350,000 Mexican Americans and 53,000 Puerto Ricans, served in the U.S. military. Figuring out the exact numbers is not easy, since Hispanics were not segregated into separate units as African Americans were. The exception to this rule is the 65th Infantry Regiment from Puerto Rico, the U.S. military's only all-Hispanic unit. There were also cases where a Hispanic male might have an American-sounding last name. Maybe his father changed his Hispanic surname when he arrived in the United States in order to find work and avoid discrimination. This was a common practice among immigrants in the early 1900s who came to the United States and wanted to fit in. They would Americanize their last name. On December 8, 1941, at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, the United States Congress declared war on the Empire of Japan in response to its surprise attack on Pearl Harbor the previous day. Thousands of Hispanics were among those that rushed to enlist and serve their country. Hispanics served with distinction throughout Europe, in the Pacific Theater, North Africa, the Lucians, and the Mediterranean. While Hispanics actively participated in World War II overseas, thousands of Hispanic men and women back home in the United States worked on railroads, in mines, shipyard, and airplane factories, and as crucial agricultural labor. A national agricultural labor shortage jeopardized the war effort, so the U.S. government established the Bracero program, which permitted millions of Mexican men to work legally in the United States on short-term labor contracts. These agreements with Mexico not only addressed the national labor shortage during World War II, but they were also meant to make right the previous Depression-era deportations that unjustly targeted Mexican Americans who were U.S. citizens. Among other honors earned, 17 Medals of Honor were awarded to Hispanics for service during the Second World War. One Mexican American who not only had an Americanized last name, but also received the Medal of Honor for his heroic actions in France was a young man named Lucian Adams. At the age of 22, Lucian received the United States' highest military award for valor. Imagine that, 22 years old. Think about what you were doing when you were 22, and now think about what 22-year-olds are up to in this day and age. While Lucian was off killing Germans, protecting our freedom and the freedom of future generations of Americans, 22-year-olds today are busy making historically inaccurate videos on TikTok. My, how the times have changed. But enough about TikTok, let's move on and learn more about a true American hero. Lucian Adams' story, hidden history that has remained long forgotten, is the story of a Hispanic American who went above and beyond the call of duty for the country he loved during the most destructive global conflict in human history. Lucian Adams was born in Port Arthur, Texas, on October 26, 1922, the son of Lucian Adams Sr. and Rosa Ramirez Adams. The Adams family consisted of 12 children, 9 boys and 3 girls, and 8 of the boys would go on to serve during the Second World War, including Lucian. All 8 of the Adams brothers would eventually return home safe after the war, but we'll get to World War II in a little bit. Lucian attended Webster and Franklin Elementary Schools in Port Arthur, as well as Thomas Jefferson Junior High School, but he eventually dropped out of high school to help support his large family. It's important to remember that at this time in American history, citizens of the United States were suffering under the Great Depression, the worst economic crisis in modern history, lasting from 1929 until the beginning of World War II in 1939. Unemployment in the United States topped 20% by 1933, and the country's industrial production had dropped by half. Rising numbers of homeless people became more and more common in America's towns and cities. This is why young men like Lucian could not waste time getting an education in school. They were needed out in the workforce, looking for any available job and source of income for their families. On September 1st, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland and sparked World War II. To justify this course of action, Nazi propagandists accused Poland of persecuting ethnic Germans living in Poland. They also falsely claimed that Poland was planning, with its allies Great Britain and France, to encircle and dismember Germany. The SS, in collusion with the German military, staged a phony attack on a German radio station, which the Germans then falsely accused the Poles of committing. 2 days after the invasion of Poland, Britain and France declared war on Nazi Germany. However, when the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east on September 17 on the side of the Germans, Poland was doomed. By the end of September, Poland officially surrendered to the Germans. By June 1940, Germany had conquered France, leaving Great Britain as the only remaining unconquered country in the world still at war with Hitler. Although the United States was a neutral country at the time and was not actively involved in the war, President Roosevelt began sending tanks, warplanes, food, and ammunition to Great Britain. In a nationwide radio broadcast, he asserted that the best policy for keeping the United States out of the war was to become the arsenal of democracy, extending full material support to the Allies. Ironically, the United States became fully involved in the European war as a result of events that took place on the other side of the globe. On December 7, 1941, Japanese carrier planes attacked the American fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, knocking out over 200 planes and sinking or damaging 8 battleships, the pride of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. A total of 2,403 Americans were killed and 1,178 others were wounded. On December 8, 1941, the day after the attack, Roosevelt delivered his famous Day of Infamy speech to a joint session of Congress, calling for a formal declaration of war on the Empire of Japan. Congress approved his request less than an hour later. Naturally, Germany and Italy, Japan's allies, responded by declaring war against the United States. At the beginning of World War II in 1939, Adams worked 18 months for Consolidated Iron Works, a company that manufactured landing crafts and warships. On June 30th, 1942, 6 months after the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor, Lucian Adams registered for the draft in Port Arthur, Texas. On February 25, 1943, 20-year-old Adams was inducted into the United States Army at Fort Sam Houston in Texas, and then he went to Camp Butner, North Carolina for basic training. He remained at Camp Butner until November 1943 and then was sent to Europe, where he became a member of the 3rd Battalion, 30th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. Adams distinguished himself during the Italian campaign of the war. The Texan hit Anzio Beach with the 3rd Infantry Division in January 1944. On the beach at Anzio, he was credited with neutralizing a German machine gun nest. Wounded in combat, Adams would receive the Purple Heart. For his efforts at Anzio, Adams was awarded the Bronze Star on May 23, 1944. By June 6, 1944, Adams and the rest of the 3rd Infantry arrived in Rome, and on August 15, 1944, the 3rd Infantry Division came ashore on the Riviera in southern France as part of Operation Dragoon. In late October, the division faced stiff enemy resistance in the Vosges Mountains in eastern France. Reinforced with fresh troops familiar with the terrain, the Germans succeeded in moving into the 3rd Infantry Division's defenses in the forest and cutting the supply lines. Assigned to a company in the 30th Infantry Regiment, Staff Sergeant Adams' unit was assigned the task of reconnecting this breach in the supply line and re-establishing contact with 2 companies that had lost contact with the rest of the battalion.
I was just a youngster then. I was going to be 22 years of age October the 26th. So 2 days, I had reached my 22nd birthday when that event occurred, and it was the 28th of October when the action took place, where I knocked out the 3 enemy machine gun and made contact with the 2 cut off companies, made contact with them, and that ended up earning me the Medal of Honor.
On October 28, 1944, Staff Sergeant Adams and his company were near Saint-Dié, France, with efforts by the Americans to rectify the situation proving slow and costly. Adams was sent forward to scout the German position and reported 3 enemy machine gun nests to his company commander. It was then decided that Adams would lead the charge. Staff Sergeant Adams braved the concentrated fire of machine guns in a lone assault on a force of German troops. Although his company had progressed less than 10 yards and had lost 3 killed and 6 wounded, Staff Sergeant Adams continued forward, dodging from tree to tree, firing a borrowed Browning automatic rifle from the hip. Despite intense machine gun fire which the enemy directed at him, and rifle grenades which struck the trees over his head, showering him with broken twigs and branches, Staff Sergeant Adams made his way to within 10 yards of the closest machine gun and killed the gunner with a hand grenade. 10 yards away, an enemy soldier threw hand grenades at Adams, but the brave young man from Texas managed to take out the German with a single burst of fire from his automatic rifle. Charging into the vortex of the enemy fire, Lucian Adams killed another machine gunner at 15 yards range with the hand grenade and forced the surrender of 2 enemy soldiers. Although the remainder of the German group concentrated the full force of its automatic weapon fire in a desperate effort to knock him out, Adams proceeded through the woods to find and exterminate 5 more of the enemy. Finally, when the 3rd German machine gun opened up on him from 20 yards away, Staff Sergeant Adams managed to kill the gunner with his Browning automatic rifle. In the course of the action, which lasted about 10 minutes, Staff Sergeant Lucian Adams personally killed 9 Germans, eliminated 3 enemy machine guns, and defeated a specialized force which was armed with automatic weapons and grenade launchers. Thanks to his actions, the woods were cleared of hostile elements and the severed supply lines were reopened to the assault companies of the 3rd Battalion. Staff Sergeant Russell Dunham followed directly behind in the pathway blazed by Staff Sergeant Adams and had the following to say about Lucian's actions. Those krauts were very rugged and had brand new winter equipment and an automatic weapon for every man. Sergeant Adams moved like a tornado, and when he reached the first machine gun emplacement, the whole pit seemed to go up into the air. There was fire and explosion all around him as he went through the woods like a wild man. When they took off, those krauts were in a panic. For those of you who are unaware, the word kraut was often used during World War II as a derogatory word meaning German. Private First Class John W. Wood was another soldier who followed Staff Sergeant Adams and had the following to say afterwards. I tried to get in a shot, but he was everywhere. Before we could see the krauts, he killed them and move on. Later in life, Lucian was asked how he felt after his heroic actions against the Germans in October 1944, and he had the following to say.
So it's a big relief. You have in mind that war is hell, and there's further war. War had not been completed yet; it had not ended, and you still had to keep going. And when you're young, you have no fears generally. But I never had any fear. I always had my family in mind, my mother, grandmother, and all the neighbors back home that were fairly religious, and they would get together and make family gatherings, and have like novenas. And they were answered. I got back.
In 1993, Lucian spoke with a reporter from the Dallas Morning News, and when questioned about his heroic actions against the Germans in France in 1944, he had the following to say: "I seen all my buddies go down and calling for medics, and I didn't want to go down with any ammunition still on me, so I just kept firing, and lucky for me, I got them before they got me." After killing 9 Germans and eliminating 3 enemy machine guns, Lucian Adams was told by messenger that he was recommended for the Medal of Honor. Since he had heard the same thing in Italy when he single-handedly destroyed a German machine gun position, he didn't pay too much attention and continued on with his unit, fighting their way through France and into Germany. In the spring of 1945, now in Germany, Lucian Adams received orders to go home to be awarded the Medal of Honor by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Before he left, however, President Roosevelt died on April 12, 1945, and Lucian's orders were changed. Instead of the United States, he would now receive the Medal of Honor in Germany. On April 23, 1945, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch presented the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Adams and 4 others in a ceremony at Zeppelin Stadium in Nuremberg, Germany, the same location of Adolf Hitler's Nazi rallies. Before the ceremony, Army personnel covered the swastika symbol on top of the stadium with an American flag. Minutes after the ceremony, Army engineers removed the flag and blew up the swastika. Video footage of the swastika being blown up by the U.S. troops can be found on our Instagram page at Hidden History Pod. Seven days after Lucian Adams received the Medal of Honor in Nuremberg, on April 30th, 1945, German dictator Adolf Hitler killed himself like a coward in order to avoid being captured by the Allies. On May 8, 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. After atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, Japan surrendered on September 2, 1945, and the Second World War came to an end. On September 7, 1945, Adams received his discharge from the United States Army. For 3 months after leaving the service, Lucian searched for work at the oil refineries in and around Port Arthur, Texas, with no luck. Then on January 4th, 1946, Lucian accepted a position with the Veterans Administration in San Antonio. There he worked as a benefits counselor for the next 40 years until his retirement in June 1986. He also served as a Veterans Affairs consultant for Congressman Frank Tejeda in the 90s. I never brought up the fact that I had been in combat myself and had been awarded the Medal of Honor, Lucian told the San Antonio Express News in 2002 when thinking of his years as a veterans counselor, because I'm no hero, I'm just an ex-soldier. As for love and a family of his own, on March 3, 1956, Lucian Adams married Linda Cassius Wong in Guadalupe County, Texas, and their first child Rosa was born 4 months later in July. The couple would go on to have 2 more children, Grace and Lucian Jr., born in 1957 and 1962 respectively. By 1971, Lucian and Linda had got a divorce, and on September 4, 1971, Lucian married a woman named Dora Fuentes. This marriage was short-lived, however, since they were divorced before Christmas 1971. Near the end of his life, Lucian Adams suffered from heart trouble and diabetes. In 2002, he was profiled in the documentary film Hispanics and the Medal of Honor, shown on the History Channel. Lucian Adams passed away on March 31, 2003, in San Antonio, Texas, at the age of 80. He was survived by his 3 children, Rosa, Grace, and Lucian Jr., 3 brothers, Roy, Albert, and Lawrence, 3 sisters, Beatrice, Juanita, and Estelle, and 2 grandchildren. Lucian was buried with full military honors at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, Texas. Jose Mendoza Lopez, a friend and fellow Medal of Honor recipient from World War II, called Lucian Adams a great, great man who did a terrific job. I will miss him very much. We here at Hidden History would like to end this episode with a powerful message from Lucian Adams himself, from a video interview he gave in 2001. Throughout his life, Lucian spoke to many different groups of people about his experiences during World War II and the responsibility one bears being a Medal of Honor recipient. This message is needed now more than ever.
My mission in talking to them was to inform them, instruct them, things of life, like obeying the elders, having some religion, respect for law and order, and to make, if they're called upon, make the answer to the call, because you're being called to protect your way of living. So do it with some pride, some strength.
Thank you for listening, and I hope that you've learned something new today. Season 3 of Hidden History will explore the lives of veterans of the United States, as well as veterans of foreign countries historically connected to our nation. Many of their stories have been hidden in the pages of history and deserve to be told. Pictures, newspaper clippings, and links to external articles relating to a particular episode are available on our website, hiddenhistorypod.com. Thanks again for listening. I'm John Rodriguez, and until we meet again, this has been Hidden History and Odyssey Through Time.